Okay, good morning. It's a Sunday morning, uh, seventh day of Elul. All right, we did last night. We did Kish Levana. If you didn't do Kish Levana yet, do it tonight. Okay, August 31st. Tomorrow is Labor Day. Things are closed in America. All right, let's not forget. The other day we forgot. It's good rushing in. Uh, we thank Hashem for giving us the ability to learn the Torah mitzvahs. I personally thank Rabbi, I'm still not too sure I'm thanking him anymore, but Rabbi Smith for having me give the shiurim as the default person in his absence. I've done 13 so far in the last I looked on YouTube. 2.5 weeks, and so today is the 14th year I passed bar mitzvah. Okay, and now we learned for the Refuah Shlema for the rabbi's father, whose name is.
Sweet.
I guess you're right there. You remember the whole name?
No.
No, so that's fine. Okay, I have to look it up then. Hold on a second. What's going on? This go back here. Sorry, hanging in there. We have to get these names right. Okay, we have to copy this somewhere. Okay. Okay, for Tzvi Halevi, Tzvi Halevi ben Miriam Edo, he should have
Halevi.
four Shlema.
Amen.
Levi. Yeah. And then I say that being, I said Tzvi Halevi. So he's obviously, his father's a Levi. Come on. Okay. And for Refuah Shlema, for Naphtali ben Menucha Bela. You got those names down right. Okay. And for Shlema for my son, who's really doing dramatically better. Baruch Hashem. Wow. All right, go. Man, he's really Baruch Hashem. He's getting it first. So keep those tefillahs coming. We keep learning from him. All right, Uriel Gabriel Ben Rechochaya. And for my friend, the doctor that I haven't spoken for a while, but Abraham, I don't know, I forget his middle name, Ben Shoshana. And in memory of my friend's son, and his name is Chana Chenech Ben Shalom Baruch. And to bring all the, and Hashem, please, before Shleimah, to keep them healthy and well as best as they can be, and bring the hostages alive back home. Anything else? And bring Mashiach now, right? Okay, let's get going. Tashma, it's about a quarter way down the bottom of 70b. Come learn the Brisa. That's interesting. Usually we say Tanya, as opposed to Hatnan, Vatanya. Here we say Tashma. So, which means come and learn, but we're learning it from a brisa. That's again the Lone Wolf Mishnah that's up on that shelf without any Gemaras attached to it. Raman Shimon ben Gamliel, this is very important, Rashbak. What does he say? Because we're going to spend the next almost 2 pages talking about Rava, all right? And we'll think, well, we've totally forgot about Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, but we don't. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Gago shechavil amalami, gago shoamarts. All right. What if a roof, this is a continuation that we learned the other day, where the Chavir, which is the Chacham, the very learned person, is sharing property next door on the ground to a Amaretz or a idol worshiper. And we discussed the borders there and uh, uh, when we had to worry that someone put their hand over and when not. And by the way, we learned, I told us at the Pasha, but I mean at the Farbrengen Shabbos morning, but we had just read in the Pasha yesterday in the sixth Aliyah about border between, you're not allowed to move borders, all right? And I had been listening to the Chabad.org tape of Rabbi Gordon. Rabbi Gordon said there was a story of 2 brothers that they had a border between the fields, and one brother was single, one brother was married with children. So in the middle of the night, the brother that was single would say to himself, "Oh, I care so much for my brother. He's got family support." So in the dark, he'd move the borderline closer to him, to his house, so that his brother would have more field and more crops to support his family. Little did he know that in the middle of night also did his brother say, "Oy vavoy, I've got Baruch Hashem, I've got a family, I've got children, but he does much better. He says, but my brother has nothing, so and he's still single, so I'm going to move the border closer to me so that uh, uh, he will have more land and it will be more attractive to a shidduch. Oh, look at this landowner, this and that. And Ribbon Shalom saw this Abbas Yisrael, this love one Jew to another, that they're each wanting to give up. Obviously, the border ended up never going anywhere because it kept on moving back and forth to the same place. But uh, that each one's willing to give up for each other. He says, you know what, this piece of land, this is where I'm going to make in the future the Beis HaMikdash. Beautiful story. Whether it's true or not, they don't know, but it's a beautiful story. And then he said that there's another piece of land where the two brothers were always arguing. So one would say he'd move the border closer, no, further away from his house, so he'd get more land. He says, "Nah, I deserve all this land. This is mine. This and that." And then the other Yid would go and he'd move the border closer to his house. Excuse me, closer to the other guy's house, so he'd get more land and say, "Nah, I deserve that." And Hashem saw the same situation there. He said, this piece of land, I'll let them build the Knesset on it. Okay, further, that's the Israeli parliament. Oh, so now, Rabbi Shimon Gamaliel says, now we're moving up in elevation. We're going into the air. What if the roof of a chaver, a roof of the learned person, is higher than the roof of Amaretz? All right, this is 0 lot lines, kind of where the houses are very close to each other, almost within reach. So there's a chaver and Amaretz, they own houses abutting one another. All right, this mama says there's -0, they're abutting each other. And the roof of the chaver is higher, abutting means touching.
Yeah.
But a 0 lot line is still a little piece of land. So, I mean, this is mamish. That's what I'm calling it minus. It's mamish next to each other. So it's like a semi-attached home.
Townhouse.
All right. Well, townhouse is usually one on top of the other. Listen, I know you're a realtor, but I looked it up recently because I own a semi-attached home. Some legalese call it townhouse, others call it semi-attached home. It depends which thing you're filling out on the form and which one they have as choices. The bottom line is it's 2 homes, they're attached. One is a little higher than the other. We agree? We agree. All right, so if the roof of the chaver, if the roof of the Talmid Chacham is higher than the roof of the Amaretz, the other Jew who doesn't know as much laws, but they're both Jews. A chaver and Amaretz own houses, are buying each other, and the roof of the chaver is higher than the Amaretz. Also, chaver shetech sham peros minich sham kalim, and this chaver, this Talmid Chacham, he spreads out all his produce and stuff on the roof to air drying the figs, I don't know, whatever, or just that's where his storage area is. He even puts his utensils up there. Now, provided that the Am Haaretz cannot reach there. So yes, his roof is higher. His roof is higher beyond hand's breadth. So there's no way if the Am Haaretz goes on his roof, he could touch the other fruits and kalim of the chaver and make them impure if the Amaretz didn't go to mikvah, whatever it's there. He says, so now it's a question. Kashila Rabbi Yochanan. This poses a difficulty, Rabbi Yochanan, who in the case of a divided courtyard, which we just said, ruled the produce in the portion, in regard to the produce of the portion in the chaver's territory. Rabbi Yochanan ruling is, this poses difficulty, Rabbi Yochanan, who in the case of the divided courtyard, which we read the other day, ruled the produce in the portion of the chaver was tahor. So in that case, he said where there was just a 50-yard line in between the two, or a little wall, whatever it was still tahor. It was still okay that the stuff he put out, the produce and the utensils in his side of the 50-yard line. So Rabbi Yochanan's ruling is defended. Amalach Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan can tell you, Shanei Hasam, the story is different there. It is different there in the case of the roost. The Islay Lishtamute, for an Amaretz has a way of evading a charge of thievery. Meimar, in other words, he could still touch the stuff and he could still get away with it. Why? So let's hear what Meimar says. Meimar's name of a Rav. Meimar, he can say, Imtureka Mamsa I was just measuring for a structure that I intend to erect on my roof. When I did so, my hand extended into your airspace. So when he's get caught red-handed, so to say, and he's leaning over on that roof, he just made, and his hand is dangling into the other roof and almost touching or maybe touching the other stuff. And they say, whoa, what are you doing? Tommy says, wait. I wasn't stealing anything. He says, I plan on making an addition. I want to raise my roof. I have the air rights, and I want to raise it just as high as yours. He says, maybe even higher, I don't know. He says, so I'm just measuring the distance. I have to know how many bricks or CBS blocks to buy, etc. I have to put it into zoning, whatever it is. So I was just measuring it. So he's got an excuse. And we did discuss, when we discussed the 12 cases, we were discussing also in some of them where the goy in that case, the idol worshiper had an excuse why was in an area as opposed to where he didn't have it in the area. Weiter, further, the Gemara again challenges Rav's ruling. So, by the way, this is what's going to keep on happening the next debate. Every time Rav says something, we're going to challenge it. Tashma, come and learn from a Baisa, again from the right side. Gago shechaver bitzad, gago shama aretz. If roof sounds like the same case. The roof of a chaver was adjacent to the level of a amaris. Oh, so this Baisa, the levels are level. I mean, the roof levels are exactly level with each other. Also, Chavis Shetech Sham Peretz Umech Sham Kalim. So the Chavis spread out his produce there and placed his utensils there. Obviously, here it's almost like it's a plain field, which is the painted 50-yard line. So even though the Amaretz, his hand can readily and easily go over the from one roof to the other, he says, that's what it's Kashil Rav. This poses the difficulty to Rav. All right. Why? What did we say Rav said at the beginning? And we got to remember because I keep on forgetting it. So let me just go back a few lines. We had said what was first thing we learned? Amal Charav is different. What was the first line for Rav's ruling? Gotta always remember Rav's ruling. So I'm just going back here. Let's just go back. So let's say, okay, Rabbi Yochanan after Haras Torah. Well, whatever Rav's ruling was, is we're always going to keep on questioning it, which I forget, and we'll remind ourselves what that is. What? The first one. Well, what did the Rav say?
But according to Rav, who does not rely on the small degree of fear of being apprehended as a thief that exists in the case of adjacent properties.
Yeah, but what does he say? So he doesn't rely on that. Then so he says it's also he's not allowed.
Correct.
Okay, all right. That's why I can't remember what he says. All right, where are we up to now? Because I just lost it going in the Shas. We're up to the Mishnah, right? Okay, Mishnah. So now we're going to bring a new case.
You're missing it.
What did I miss?
The little piece.
Right before the Mishnah?
Yeah.
Okay. Amalach Rav could tell you, he's answering, Lavika Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Dekai Kavase. Is there not Rabban Shimon Gamliel who agrees with me? On the Damrai Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, I state my opinion in accordance with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So when we brought the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Rashbag, now we're saying that he agrees with him. Again, this is one of those by chart or by heart. By heart, it gets very confusing because it goes back and forth a lot. If you run the chart, maybe I'll go and ask ChatGPT to make me a chart on this whole stuff. Maybe not. Whatever. Anyway, let's continue. We're up to the Mishnah. A troop of soldiers entered the city. This is different from the troop of soldiers we had before. And they came into a Jew's house. B'shas shalom, if it's a time of peace, chavias betuchas hasoros. Then we say the open barrels are prohibited because they probably touched the wine and made a yain neser. Stumas mutaras. But the sealed ones are permitted. Okay? And because they obviously didn't touch it, it's peacetime. They have plenty of time to be there. B'shas milchama. But if this occurred during wartime, elu ve'elu mutaras. Both these and those are permitted. Whoa, what does that mean? Hey, Dave. All right. If I was wondering why the dog just disappeared. All right. If this occurred during wartime, Ela ve'ela mutaros, then both these and those are permitted. Lefi she'ein pnai lanesach, because there's no time to perform a libation. This is very important. What we just handed this page. We're saying that if it was peacetime, then when the soldiers came into the Jews' house, then all the open barrels, that was for sure yain nesach, because they drank and they put their hands in, they made yain nesach. But if it was wartime, then but the sealed ones weren't. And then weren't in the peacetime, but in the case of wartime, they're all permitted. Why? Because we're saying they had no time to perform a libation. So now the Gemara's ruling is going to bring a case from somewhere else and say, I'm not sure about this. So Gemara's ruling permitting even open barrels in wartime because there's no time to perform libations in question. Remember, this is way before that they had the laws of if a non-Jew can see it. Here we're still with the laws of the idol worshiper, and he has not put his hand in the wine or anything like that. So in contrast to this, we bring the following Mishnah. Okay, Mishnah that comes from Shekafshua Karkam. A cedar was vanquished by a siege army. Listen to this. Kol Kohanish Betocha Psulos. All Kohanim who had wives, all of a sudden their wives are declared unfit to live any longer with their Kohens, with their husbands. In other words, all those wives unfortunately get divorces. Now, why? What are we worried? We're worried that these soldiers did unspoken words with these women, and therefore they made them us or prohibited to their husbands who are Kohanim. Now, in general, if such an act happens to a regular Jewish woman, not someone married to a Kohen, she can go back to her husband. She was forced, just like the case of Nara Hamarosa, the young girl that was had stuff done to her that shouldn't have been done in the field. All right, we say since it was against her will, she is still okay. Same thing with general wives in general. However, here in the case of wives of Kohanim, they're no longer. And this is really this law kind of makes me sad, but it has to do with maintaining the purity of the priests and. Can you sit down already, please? All right, we should be concerned. I know you mean well. All right, but evidently, here, as long as women making all this noise, pour me some water, please. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Right. Evidently, the fact that the soldiers are preoccupied with war does not preclude them from taking wine for other persons. So we're saying here that in the time of war, you know what? The soldiers will always find time, unfortunately, to do acts that are horrible in time of war and unforgivable. And they even did this on October 7th. We should never forget this. And it wasn't a time of war, but it became a time of war. The other soldiers, right? This is something that's unforgivable to do. All right. And unfortunately, but we're saying, but we're not worried that they made our wine impure. Why? Because they were very busy during war. They were running around. They were doing this stuff that they had to do, these bad soldiers. So they didn't have time to go make libation wine to pray to their idols. But they did have time, this quick stuff on the side. And so that's the story. Amar of Murray. So Murray said, "V'nasach ain't p'nai." For yain nesach wine, there's no time. L'vo yesh p'nai. But to do terrible acts of war, they're prohibited. That they had time for. And that's why the wives of Kohanim were prohibited to their husbands. Okay. Now Mishnah says, Umanim shel Yisrael, a new case, Jewish workers, sheshalach lahem oved kochanim chavish yayin nesach b'scharon. Now, these Jewish workers, who they work for an idol worshiper. Okay, they were making a living. They were doing just stuff that had nothing to do with the Nesach wine. And now the idol worshiper had to pay him. And for whatever reason, this idol worshiper decided that he was going to pay him with Nesach wine. And that's a problem, because we're not allowed to get benefit from Nesach wine. So how are they going to use the Nesach wine as their pay? One moment.
Amen.
So the Jew can say back to his boss, I want money instead. He says, I worked for it. Show me the money. Don't pay me with wine. Now, he's not trading him back to wine, because had he accepted the wine, then the Jew owns Nessach wine, and once he owns Nessach wine, he can't sell that for money or trade for money because he can't have benefit from Nessach wine. So, Mishenichnas el Rashusa, once it entered into their legal domain, in other words, once the Jew accepted it as a payment, took legal possession, usur, that's prohibited for him to go and ask back for the money. So there's a knock on the door. Hello, this is United States Postal Service. I got a bottle of wine here, like cash on delivery. Sign here, and the Jew goes, bottle of Nessach wine. Who's that from? It's from your boss. He says, no, I refuse delivery. Tell him to take it back. He owes me money. He owes me money. So that's it. You don't accept that. If you don't accept it, it can be returned because you never accept it. You never made a kinyan on it. The problem is if you did accept it and sign for it and then lifted up and said, oh, thank you for the package. Oh, my God, he gave me Nessach wine. All right, then you're stuck with it. What are you going to do? You can't. Anyway, so the Gemara, well, we trying to say it's too late. You're trying to send it, but it's a lesson. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. So Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Mutar ladam lamar lo ved kochavim. What can he say back to the idol worshiper? Save our face, alai minas. Minas hamech. This is a new case. So let's say you have a Jew and he owes taxes, all right? And he has an accountant who, let's say he has let's go back in those days. It's kind of hard to make this up now. He owes taxes to everyone owes taxes to the governor in those days, whoever was the king, right? And he knew he had to bring to the king 1,000 rubles worth. That was his taxes. And he says to this idol worshiper, go and take care of my business, right? He's asking him to be a favor. You're going to pay taxes, pay my taxes, and, I'll give you back money. So the ruling is questioned. Because what happens if the idol worshiper pays with Nessach wine? Because wine was a commodity. So then he was paying with Nessach wine, which the Jew can't get any benefit from. So how does he pay back the idol worshiper for the wine, which he couldn't have benefit from? To say he would have to pay his taxes again. It's a whole mixed up story. So Meisvei, they challenged this from a brisa. So they went to the right shelf again. They took a Mishnah off the shelf there without a Gemara. It's called a brisa. Yom Adam Lavet Kachavim. A man should not say to an idol worshiper, Al Tachtei Lotzia, enter into my stead to satisfy my tax obligation to the ruler. Don't say that. Don't say go in and take my barrels out and then pay my taxes with it. Because if he does that, he might take the barrels, turn it into Yayin Nesa, the idol worshiper, and then pay with it. And now the guy's got benefit from Yayin Nesa, they can't do that, etc. So Amalei Rav. So Rav said to the challengers, Atachte Liotza Kamras. Are you saying that the Bryce's case of enter into my stead to the ruler means instead is comparable to the case of Rav Yehuda of go and satisfy for me the king's portion? In which they're taking the two cases, and Rav is obviously saying, wait, they're two different cases. Halo damya elalaha. When Rav Yehuda's case is similar only to this latter case of the Brisa about omelo malteni mina otzia, but he may say to the idol worshiper, save me from my obligation to the ruler. So what he's clarifying again, what we just said, is he can say to the idol worshiper, hey, I owe taxes. You're going to pay taxes. Do me a favor, take care of my tax obligation. Later on, I owe you money, I'll pay you for it. If the idol worshiper happened to use Nessach wine to pay for it, that had nothing to do with the Jew in the sense that he didn't buy the Nessach wine, he didn't acquire it. That's how the idol worshiper went to unload some of the extra stuff that he had. But if he said to him, go take my wine, turn into Nessach wine, and he makes a deal, he says, well, I'll buy you wine. If it's any point where the Jew could technically own the Nessach wine, then it's not allowed. Okay, further. New Mishnah. Since it's forbidden to derive benefit from Nessach wine, a Jew who sells wine to an idol worshiper must make sure that his customer does not touch the wine before the sale is complete. This is what we started saying. Because once the idol worshiper would touch his kosher wine, he'd make a Nessach, yain nesach, and the Jew can get benefit of that. So if he hasn't gotten paid before, sorry, sorry, Charlie, you didn't make any money. For should this occur, the seller would be considered to have sold Nesach wine and would be forbidden from benefit from the purchase money. So this topic now, our mission is going to discuss in detail with many, many cases. And it gets confusing because, like always, it's machlokas, just whatever case we bring, we're going to challenge that case. We think we got the answer, we're going to challenge that case. Then we're going to bring another case. It's the usual jazz. With respect to a Jew who sells his wine, it's kosher wine to an idol worshiper. Okay? So he's selling kosher wine. Pasuk ad shelo madad. If he sets the price before the idol worshiper, measured the wine. So the first thing he does, he says, look, I'm going to sell you a quart of wine. One Jew. He says, and I'm charging you $10 for a quart of wine. Sounds like a pretty good deal. $10. Let's say it's a pint. I'm selling you a pint of wine. It's charging you $10. It's still a good deal. It's good wine. He says, price is made. That purchase money is permitted for benefit. When the Jew gets paid, whether he gets paid right now or later on, he can keep that money. Why? Because he never sold him Nesach wine. He sold him kosher wine, and the agreement on the payment was from beforehand. And I know this is a little reminiscent of the cases with the dressmakers, but we're not going to get into that, where they were paid before, paid later, but at the point of sale. This is not the point of sale here, but we're going to kind of raise questions of what's happening at the point of pouring. All right, PLP. Maradad Shelo Pasuk. If the idol worshiper measured the wine before the Jews set the price, in other words, he jumped the gun. The idol worshiper is already measuring the wine. He says, yeah, okay, remember he used to stick his foot in and see how much the wine is. That was one of the ways. It's like he had tattoos of a ruler on his foot, and he know exactly how much wine was. If the idol worshiper measured the wine in any way, all right, before they set the price, Dam of Asurin, then the purchase money is prohibited for benefit. Why? Because he's already made this kosher wine, Nesach wine. And once he's made Nesach wine, the Jew can't sell it to him. He can't have benefit from Nesach wine. Thank you. That was like, make sure you're listening. All right, the Gemara discusses whether Mashiach is an effective kinyan for an idol worshiper. So this is a segue into the whole case of Mashiach. Mashiach normally is a term we used for if you buy an animal, you pull it by the ropes. By pulling the animal, you show that you have now ownership of the animal. But Mashiach basically means any kind of pulling or lifting. So in this case, all the Mashiachas is going to be Hagbar. It's going to be lifting the barrel. If the idol worship is holding the barrel or lifting the barrel, that's when we're going to say that it becomes Ayin Nesach. That's kind of the basis for these things. All right. Amar Abaya. Amar Amemar. Amemar said, Mashiach abavdei kochavim kona. So we also had this case way before, a long time ago. I don't remember the exact case with Oved Kochavim, whether their chatzir was kona, if they needed. This is a machlokus in the Gemara. It is a argument whether or not this a method of pulling or lifting, which is how Jews acquire from one another, also applies to idol worshippers, because they'll bring times yes and they'll bring times no. Hang in. Every question is answered 3 lines later. So Amema said, Mashiach bavdei kochavim kani. So Amema says that Mashiach in the deal with an idol worshippers, with an idol worshiper, that does make acquisition. That's what. And now he's going to support his opinion from a case. Teda, no. The Hane Parsoi Mishadre Parashne Pardashne Ladade Belohade Behu. He says, they're Persians, and they would send this Pardashne. It's like their presents, right, to one another, and the senders never retract. So Persians were never Indian givers. So obviously, Persia is Persia, India is India. All right, never the twain shall meet. And it was Persians did, if they sent someone a gift, whatever it is, they would never, for whatever
take back.
circumstance, or whatever, take the gift back. It was the gift. So what you see there is once they sent it, it was already the other person to receive the receiver got it, which meant they didn't need Mashiach. They don't hold. So this is a proof against the opinion that says idol worshippers need Mashiach, need some act of pulling or lifting or Agbah, because they would never go back in it. Evidently, the Mashiach performed by a recipient affects the recipient's acquisition, and the sender is enabled to rescind the gift. I take that back what I said. See, I'm jumping ahead because I know this thing. They're saying when the receiver took the seal, the package that was delivered by Amazon, he said, "Oh, thank you for the package." At that point, he had done an act, Mashiach. So initially, I said the opposite, but you see, because I'm going to try and disprove it. Mashiach or Hagbah, in other words, acquisition, active acquisition, we'll call it. Active acquisition is held by idol worshippers. But here's the opposing opinion, which I said before, but I jumped the gun. Rav Ashi said, Le'olam emelach. In fact, I could say to you, Mashiach b'avikoch eina kolam. Mashiach, this active acquisition by idol worshippers, does not acquire it. So, and the idol worshiper acquires the bought item only when he pays for it, and he actually has to pay for it. And the reason that these persons never rescinded on the gifts, because they're haughty guys. And if they would rescind on it, it would seem like they're cheap. And they say, I really am sorry, I want it back. I wasted money on this and that. But it was above them to take a gift back. So that's why they never took it back. It had nothing to do with the active acquisition on the other end. So once again, you see how there's always one side that can knock out the other side. Support for this position that is brought to you by our sponsors. Support for this position that Mashiach does not affect acquisition by idolaters is cited. So, of course, we can do one of two things with the last statement. We can either challenge it or we can support it. In this case, we're going to bring you support. Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said, on the basis of what do I say it? That's good English word. See, makes more sense in Hebrew. Midamalahu, Rav Lahanu Savoisa, that's his name. From that which Rav instructed these Jewish wine sellers. Savaisa means wine sellers. Midamalahu Rav, from what Rav said to Lahanu, these Savaisas, to these Jewish wine sellers. He's bringing another case. Ki kaliso chamra lavde kochavim. So listen what Rav's telling him. He says, when you measure out, wine to the idol worshippers, shaklu zuze minayho v'hada kayulahan. When you do that, make sure you get paid first. This is what he said before, or he's just recoined that, and then measure it out for them. Why? Because he's going to explain his opinion that when you measure out for them, there are so many possibilities where the wine can become yayin nesach. And we're trying to avoid that, and you want to get paid, so make sure you always pay before. That's what Rob says. Vilo nikito bahadyazuze. And what happens if the guys say, yeah, I don't mind paying you, but I don't have any money with me right now. Typical thing. I'm sorry, I'm not carrying any cash. Can't pay you. And then the guy says, well, don't you have a credit card? He says, no, I have no money. Lend money from them. And then, and so what he says is what you should do. Lend them the money. All right? They don't have money. Say, okay, I'm lending you the money to buy it from me. This is real schmuck. This Jew's really doing his wine. So now he lends them the money. Then they buy his wine. So it's been paid for before. So it's not that he got the INS first. He got his money first. It's just they owe him money.
He made him a loan. He
gave him a loan. Right. He didn't sell money. He gave them money because they didn't have any. I'm lending you the money to buy my wine. Now pay me. They paid them. And then they did the deal with the INS. Vada Shakilu And then take it back from them before pouring the wine. So that the money should be alone with them. That's what we just said. If you do not do so, for when the wine becomes yain nesech, it'll still be in your possession. So again, we keep on repeating the same thing. And when you subsequently take money for it, then you will be taking payment for this nesech wine. So again, how do we avoid this? By loaning him the money in that case, getting paid right away. Rav Ashi develops his proof. So we're going to go even deeper into this. And if you should think that Mashiach affects acquisition by an idol worshiper, did I just jump to the new page?
No, you're good.
What's the next words?
Why is it necessary to take money from them first?
Yeah, I mean, wait. See, it jumps on me the page. Okay, 1 second. All right, so Rav Ashi develops even if you should think the Mashiach affects acquisition by an idol worship, why is it necessary to take the money first? Wait, he was, if you think Mashiach affects acquisition, why take the money first? And it's kind of a ridiculous question this right now, which is a Reminuhu. So we're on 70, we're next page, right? We're on 71B.
Yes.
Okay, we're on 71B.
Top.
Why, even if the idol worshiper does not pay for the wine in advance, once the Jew pours the wine into measuring utensil and the idol worshiper pulls the measuring utensil, does an act of acquisition, the measuring utensil containing the wine, he's acquired the wine with Mashiach. And the wine doesn't become yain nesech until he touches it later. So what the case in question and the argument is, what are you even worried about that you need to get paid first? You're selling him kosher wine, not yain nesech wine. So if you pour, this is the initial question, which we can go into. If you pour that wine into a bucket, and initially we're thinking it's his own barrel, and then we're going to learn maybe it's the picture of the idol worshiper. Until the idol worshiper has acquired it, he hasn't acquired it. So therefore, you sold it to him and it's kosher wine, and therefore you should be paid no matter what benefit, no matter what happens afterwards. Okay, and the wine does not become nesach wine until the guy touches it later. Then it becomes nesach wine. So the Gemara rejects the proof. Now, that's not good. Why? Kayel Varami Lama the Yisrael. If indeed the Jewish wine seller measures and pours the wine into a measuring utensil of a Jew, which is what we were just trying to say, that hey, it's still kosher wine, it's being poured. At this point, it's still everything okay. Achinami is indeed so that the idol worshiper would acquire the wine with Mashiach when he lifted it. Yes, he will acquire the wine when he lifts it and does acquisition, he said. But listen, and before that, before red in the ring, it prohibited as nesach wine. Only at that point is nesach wine. And Rav would have not required them to take the purchase money prior to measuring the wine. And in that case, Rav wouldn't have to say. In other words, if it was clear, black and white, that the Jew poured it into a bucket, probably his own, all right, before everything happened, and then the guy picked it up afterwards, he sold him kosher wine, end of story, all right, and there should be no problem, even if it gets paid later on. So what? Hang in there. All the questions you have are in the next page in the F. Trust me.
I just want to make something clear.
What?
So what they're arguing about is if he poured it into the Jew's vessel,
okay,
they could do it.
That's what I'm saying. Hold your questions. Every single variation of the theme, every variation of the theme comes up. So every thought that's going on your mind to question this is going to be said. It's like the next page is nothing but a big Talmudic headache. All right. So that's what I'm saying. Just hold your horses. Lamana David Kucham. And Rav's instruction to take the money before pouring the wine was necessary only where the Jewish wine seller measures and pours the wine into the measuring utensil of an idol worshiper. So now we're saying if he was pouring it into his own utensil, Rav wouldn't argue about the wine because it's still kosher wine. It's still in the Jewish container. There was no active acquisition made. The whole questions that are going on is what if he's pouring it into the idol worshiper's utensil? At what point in the idol worshiper's utensil does it become nesach wine? Is it when the guy picks it up? What if he's holding it? Then he's already picked it up to start. Is it once it's entering the airspace? Is it when it finally goes down and touches maybe some leftover? It's going to go over every situation. All the things that we've learned in the last week, it's going to pour this all onto this one page. So it sounds like it's very complicated, but if you really just listen one line at a time, you kind of say, oh, I understand. But don't jump ahead in your mind because you drive yourself nuts, because the pages will drive you nuts enough. All right, David Kochami says, the whole situation here is where the Jew poured the wine pour the wine into the measuring utensil of the idol worshiper, which presumably contains a residue of nesach wine. So now you're already seeing the problem. He pours it in. As soon as the wine gets in and touches the nesach wine, all right, we did learn before, there's an opinion of nizak, or whatever the word was called, nizak, of the continuation. So the wine gets contaminated there, and since it's in the state of pouring, all right, goes all the way up without even the funnel, all right, goes into the juice thing, and this whole, even the wine that continues to pour is nesach wine.
Somebody says a blessing on the wine, and then you just leave a little bit in there, and then you pour more in, that wine is blessed. So more people can get the blessing by drinking that wine.
Yeah, but here we're talking about nesach wine.
But it's the same concept.
Okay. I try not to bring the same concept from the natural, but I get where you're going. All right. And that's why when you pour more in you, it's all like that. Okay, good. Good gezugt. That means you said well. In this scenario, the Jews wine, 1.4. On the left. Left is winning 1-0. In this scenario, the Jews' wine becomes prohibited before the idol worshiper lifts the wine and acquires it with Mashiach. As soon as the Jews' wine reaches the bottom of the idol worshiper's measuring utensil and mixes with the residue, it becomes prohibited as nesach wine. Hence, the idol worshiper will not pay the money in advance. If the idol worshiper did not pay the money in advance, and the idol worshiper would first acquire the wine when he lifts it, if you're holding Mashiach, all right, he would be acquiring nesach wine because it already became nesach wine because that utensil happened to have nesach wine at the bottom. The first case we talked about was a Jew pouring it into his own utensil. So that Mashiach, that active acquisition would make sense. But here, it's already nesach wine. So when he does the active acquisition of picking it up, the idol worshiper, he's picking up nesach wine. Now the Jews sold him nesach wine, and that he can't make his money on. And the money would subsequently pay for it would be the purchase for nesach wine, and the Jew can't take that money. The Gemara objects. That's why I say every time we have something, why the supporter will object it. Suf. I love this. Suf. You know what that means? It's like, this is the end. Finally, this is the end. Guess what? Never is suf. But that, as it may be, all right, given what you've said, even if the Jew poured the wine into the measuring utensil of the idol worshiper, we can still infer from Rav's ruling that the Mashiach does not affect the acquisition for an idol worshiper, because he said he had to do Mashiach. Why? Kimata la'avira demana kane. For if Mashiach does affect acquisition by an idol worshiper, then as soon as the wine enters the utensil's airspace, the idol worshiper acquires it with Hagbaha. So he says, let's say the idol worshiper is holding his flask, big flask, and the Jew is pouring kosher wine into it. Or as soon as it goes into the airspace, we're not talking about anything on the bottom. the idol worship, and he hasn't take his hand off to touch the wine, obviously, because he's got to hold the flask, all right? As soon as it enters the airspace, the idol worshiper has acquired it. If he's acquired it, it's now Nesach wine. Because Nesach wine doesn't have to be a Nesach wine yet. Nesach wine is a potential wine that's going to have its hand mixed in, etc., to be used for idol worshiper. Yeah, Nesach lo have ad demate or eat say demana. Says, and it does not become prohibited as Nesach wine until it reaches the floor of the vessel and mixes with the Nesach wine residue. That was our answer. And since Rav nevertheless requires that the Jewish wine sellers take the money before measuring the wine, it's evident that the Mashiach that the idol worshiper made prior to the wine becoming prohibited does not affect acquisition. So to repeat, this case we just had, the idol worshiper is holding his barrel, his flask. The Jew is pouring kosher wine into the flask. The fact is, and just holding this above the ground by the idol worship, that is an active acquisition. It's not on the ground, it's actively doing something. It's working against gravity, right? So that would be Mashiach. When the Jew pours the stuff, his kosher wine in there, it should be now, that's why Rav says, hey, get paid before. It's going to be
Contaminated.
Nesach wine, right? And then they said, well, is it contaminated when it comes into the airspace, or is it contaminated when it hits the wine on the bottom by the retrograde flow? So that's what we're saying now, Shmami. Now, Nitzah Chibur. And are we to learn from this ruling of Rav that the stream constitutes a connection with respect to Nesach wine? This is what I'm saying, get very confused, because we have all these possibilities and we keep on going back and forth. Just remember, Rav said, now I remember what Rav said, get paid before the sale. If you get paid before the sale, you can't get into any of these problems of arguing at what point did it become Nesach wine? When the idol worshiper held it, when it went into the airspace, when it touched the wine and the retrograde flow, blah, 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 etc. The Gemara rejects the suggestion. As the Israelis say, no. That's modern Hebrew, lo. Of course, everyone else who learn yeshiva says low, like how low can you go? If indeed the idol worshiper holds a measuring vessel in his hand, hachinami is indeed so that the idol worshiper would acquire the wine with hagba'ah before it became prohibited as nesach wine. So here they're saying, well, wait a minute. If he's holding it and he hasn't done nisuch yet, and the wine has not reached the bottom yet, it's midway flowing down. You know, this is like when they take the pictures at the end of a horse race, and this horse wins by a nose. Whatever, you know, it's not. You don't even know it's over, and it's over. All right. And Rav would have required the wine sellers to take the money prior to measuring the wine, because that's what Rav holds. Now we know it. Rav says get paid first. And Rav's instruction to take the money before pouring the wine was necessary only where the idol worshiper's measuring utensil was resting on the ground. All right, so the one case, we mentioned it earlier, but we haven't been done in detail, is what if it's resting on the ground? So he has not done Hagba'ah yet. So he's saying you still need to get paid. Why do you need to get paid? And now we're going to go into more cons and pros. The Gemara objects. The Tiknele Kelyo. But even so, let the idol worshiper's utensil acquire the wine for him. For when the wine enters its airspace, now that the utensil is on the ground, before it reaches the bottom of the utensil and becomes prohibited as nesach wine. That's what we want to say now for this case, or in this viewpoint. Are we to learn? Oh, 1 second. Shmat mina. Are we to learn from this ruling of Rav that if a seller places produce in a utensil of a buyer resting in the domain of the seller, the buyer does not acquire the produce? That's the question now. So what is the question? The idol worship comes to the Jewish owners the Jewish owner. The Jewish owner owns a wine store. So he's now in the Rishus, he's in the domain of the Jewish owner. He comes in, he puts his flask down on the ground. And now he says, sell me a pint of wine. And now the Jew goes and he starts to pour. So the question is going to be, is it acquired? There's no hamshacha here. There's no lifting up. There's no hakbar. It's the same thing. All the hakbars here, hamshachas, are lifting it up because he put it down on the ground. But he put it down on the ground in the domain of the Jew. So the question is, are we going to say that when the Jew pours it in there, it's ayin nesech? Does he have to get paid before? Can he get paid before the guy leaves the store? Interesting question. Again, we keep on, the Gemara is so cool, it dissects every God is in the details. The buyer does not accept, in fact, I could tell you that Rav holds that the seller places the produce of a utensil of a buyer resting in the domain of the seller. The buyer does not acquire the produce yet.
You forgot lo.
No, I said lo to begin. I'm just reading in English now. And it's lo. But I just had said that to you when you said lo. And here, in Rav's case, what are we dealing? So now we're going to again further to fine-tune this case. What are we dealing with? Kigan deika akebes yayin apume dechuzanta. I don't know if I'm reading this right because partly I don't have my glasses on and partly the nukudos, whether I have them or not, they're not necessarily, I don't know, whatever. And where there is a lip which retains wine on the mouth of the idol worshipper's jug, which contains a drop or two of nesach wine residue for when it was last used. So what are we saying here? There are a lot of typically, like when you go in a restaurant and the waiter comes and he's got this aluminum flask and he's pouring you water. He pours it straight out of the spout. The ice doesn't fall into you. Why? Because they have a built-in little kind of protection there. Like a little wall. So that's what we're talking about here. This kind of little wall before it's spout. When you ask the waiter for ice or ice water, he pours it from the side always. Or if it just has no water left, the ice, he pours it, because otherwise the ice can't fall over. So we're talking about a flask that has a little wall on top. Why is that significant? Because that wall is usually not dry. It has something left over from the last time things were poured by it. It's got a little angle to it. All right. So what we're saying is the last time this idol worshiper used this flask, a little of the nesach wine was left on top. So now we're changing the case from waiting till it gets through the airspace down to the bottom, that when you're pouring on top, as it's going, some drops of the nesach wine way at the beginning of the show gets and infiltrates the kosher wine and makes it. So it's
1/60th rule.
We're not into that right now. We're just talking into whether it's nesach wine. But that's a good question. But we're not asking that at this point. It actually comes way at the end of the Gemara in this case. So you're thinking just too far ahead. Where there is a lip, which is good, means you know your stuff. The 2 points to the left side. The chuz, David's winning. You better think of good questions to ask. And wake up there. Okay. Where's our lawyer? Sleeping. I know he's a Sunday morning. The chuzavna, the chuzanta. Where is a lip which retains wine on the mouth of the idol worshiper's jug, which contains a drop or two of nesach wine residue from when it was last used, the kama insechle, where each initial drop of a Jew's wine, as it's poured into the idol worshiper's jug, mixes with the residue of the nesach wine on top of the jug, and is therefore rendered nesach wine before it even goes into the jug. So they're saying that this top spout area with this little ledge to it, this is actually above the jug. So it's becoming nesach wine before it even enters the jug. Oh, it's gewaltig how they thought this one up. Hence, when the idol worshiper subsequently acquires the wine, when it enters into the airspace of his jug, which was one of the cases we said before, the wine is already prohibited. Before it wasn't prohibited. Before we said, no, it's kosher wine coming into the airspace. Now the kosher wine has been contaminated on the way in by the few drops that were on top on that little ledge there. See? So when it enters the airspace, so the wine is already prohibited, and the proceeds would be forbidden for the Jew. Hence, therefore, Rav says, get paid ahead of time, because if he brings that kind of thing, you're not going to be able to make any money. He's got to make a living. The Gemara asks, oh, come on, but if so, then according to whom does Rav's rule that unless the Jew takes the purchase money beforehand, it would be forbidden? Right. If so, according that the reason Rav required the wine seller to take the purchase money in advance was not because he was going to try to worship my rendered Nesach wine by touching before acquiring, as understood originally, but because it's concerned that the wine be rendered prohibited as a mixture. That's what we just said. All right. So if so, what we just said, then according to whom does Rav rule that unless the Jew takes the purchase money beforehand, it would be forbidden? The local Rabban Shimon Gamliel, certainly not in the according to Rav Shimon Gamliel. The Rabban Shimon Gamliel, because if this was according to Rabban Shimon Gamliel, why he says that when the Nesach wine mixes with the prohibited wine, the entire mixture may be sold to idol worshippers without charging them for the value of the Nesach wine in it. So here we're talking to something similar to the 1 in 60, but we're talking about he pours it in. There was, according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, there was a drop of Nesach wine on the bottom, let's say 1 ounce. He pours in 59 ounces. No, let's not go into the 60. He pours in 50 ounces, all right? So he's charging, if the charge is 10 cents per ounce, they'll charge him $4.90. You can't charge them for the 1 ounce on the bottom that got mixed with the nesach, all right, because that was prohibited to you. You're not drinking wine. You're allowed to get paid. You're allowed to get.
Why doesn't he measure it before pouring it and charging him for what the measurement before he poured it?
Maybe, what he knows? You're saying, why doesn't the Jew measure it? That's not the question here. The question is, what if he pours it? Yeah, let's say he measured it. He says, yeah, I got 60 ounces, 50 ounces, whatever. Pours it in, and then the idol worshiper says, oh, by the way, I had Nesach wine at the bottom. That's the case. The case has nothing to do. He says, how does he get paid?
Okay,
he can't get paid for that. And to answer you, we're not dealing with drinking. That's where we come into 160. Because Nesach wine is prohibited. Period. Mashahu. It's wine and wine.
So 160, you can't even measure that.
But the 160 is min she'eino mino, when the kind is not in its own kind. Here, wine and wine is the same kind. It's just that wine and prohibited wine is not allowed. B'mashahu. When it's min, this was last week, a kind in the same kind. That the littlest bit nullifies it. You can't drink that at all. It's done. That's what the law is. Min she'eino b'mino, when you're pouring, and that was all last week. I don't know if you caught that day. We're talking about vinegars and this and that, and the cases with the mouse and all these things. Though that's we have one kind that's going into another. And here again, we're not talking about drinking the wine. We're talking about getting money for what you're allowed. You're not allowed to get hana. You can still sell the Nesach wine, but you can't get hana from in certain cases. That's what gets confused. That's why you got to be careful with the questions you ask now, because when you start asking a question, nothing gets out of you. And we ask outside of the question at hand, we end up going to other cases, and it gets even more confusing. So let's just try and learn the Gemara. It'll make it a lot easier. And if you still have questions, then go over the Gemara later on. Just go over. I did that last week.
We finish.
Well, you can ask me, but I might not know the answer. All right. The Gemara answers. I'm not the Rav. You can ask me, but I don't know. This is not a Daf Yomi is not a halacha shir, so I don't know the halacha of any of these. I'm just learning Gemara. That's all I'm doing. And I'm learning. You guys are hanging here learning with me. That's all. I'm not even teaching the Gemara. I'm just learning out loud. The Gemara answers. See how I get out of it? Midehu timer ela Rav. Is this argument directed in anyone other than Rav? In other words, where Rav says you got to be paid ahead of time. Well, then there is no question. Hama Rav. Rav stated explicitly, halacha Rav Shimon ben Gamliel chavis b'chavis. Rav Shimon says the halacha according to Rabban Gamliel only with respect to a barrel of nesach wine that became mixed with a barrel of permitted wine. Elalo yayin b'yayin. Here, listen, but not with respect to wine mixed in wine. In other words, if the guy came into a store and he brought a barrel of nesach wine, listen to the case. Guys have such spilkes. Come on. He brought the idol worshiper brought in a barrel of prohibited wine into the guy's store, and it looked just like all the other barrels in the store. There were, 50 barrels, and now he mixes in that as 51 barrels, and now they want to make business. Now he has a problem. All right, the halacha according to Rabbi Shimon only with respect to a barrel of nesach wine that became mixed up. This isn't mixed wine in wine. It got mixed with a barrel of permitted wine. So it's, which wine was the nesach wine and which wasn't? So in that case, and he says, I want to buy out your store. I want all that. So he says, okay, well, I had 50 barrels for sale. There's now 51 barrels for sale. Or I'm not sure there's one, but one for sure was yours, so I'm going to charge you whatever is less one. Because one of them really wasn't mine. They're separate barrels. Avalo yayin b'yayin. But we're not talking about the case where Rabbi Shimon, where it's wine that's poured into wine, because that's min shebemino, it like and like. And when it comes to that, all right, that is b'mashu. It's not allowed at all. I'm moving on. The Gemara returns. We are 3 pages behind. So if I answer these questions, which I don't necessarily know the right answers, I'm just going to lead the sheep down the road, whatever that term is, taking me down the wrong path, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to continue learning Gemara. Forgive me, but that's what I'm doing. The Gemara returns to discuss the Maima's portion that Mashiach ben idol worshiper affects acquisition. So again, Amema said Mashiach, active acquisition by an idol worshiper, that makes it acquired. Meisvei. They challenged Amema from a brisa. So they took a Mishnah, a lone Mishnah from the right side, didn't have any Gemara attached. Alokeach, Grutos, min Avdei Kochavim. One who buys scrap metal, he buys scraps of silver from an idol worshiper. Motzabahem Ovadas Kochavim. And while he's going through the scrap metal, because he wants to make money from it, actually a scrap metal is valuable metals. It's silver, it's gold, whatever it is. And then he sees, oh my God, look at this. This is the hand of an idol. It's one of those things. He says, whoa, and he's not allowed to have hana. He's not allowed to have benefit from an idol. All right. Im ad shelo nasa mas mashach. The law is that if he performed Mashiach before he paid, so if the Jew had already taken all this is taken, they make a deal, and he takes all this stuff, puts it into his bag. So he did Mashiach, and the Jew acquires by Mashiach, by an active acquisition. And then he goes, pays the seller, and then he goes, looks, and goes, oh no, I bought an idol in there. Yachsir. He has to return that idol and deducts its value from the purchase price. Right. Let me go over this again. Louis, if he performed Mashiach, that's before he paid. Before he paid. Oh, because he can't buy that. He can't buy it because he can't buy it now. So he gives that back. All right. And deducted from the purchase price. But listen what it says. But if he performed Mashiach after he paid to the seller, then he can't have any benefit from it because he bought an idol. and he bought the idol, he already paid for it. So the only thing, and we've said this before, you can throw, like if you have forbidden coins, you throw it into
get
the
it
Dead
for free.
Sea.
What if you get the basement?
That's not the case. So don't ask
I
me.
talked to a rabbi yesterday.
But that's
His
not
father
the
used
case.
to do that in Europe. They used to give him the metal, he used to make it into steel and sell it back to the government.
So what does that have to do here? If the case here is if he got an idol after he paid for it, he's not to have any honor for it. He has to throw it into Yosha. Period. That's what this case is. You're saying, what if he took it and made it something? He's still, according to this case, if part of that was from an idol, he's not allowed to have honor. Now he's got a bigger problem. Which part? Well, we're going to say, well, at least 50, whatever it is. So whatever went on there, all right? And it was wartime, I don't know. But right now we're talking about this. Interesting story, though. I'm not giving him a point for that.
Free.
All right. He must transport the idol to the Dead Sea and cast it in. If you should think that Mashiach affects the acquisition in the deal of an idol worshiper, so why then should the Jew return the idol in the Bryce's first case? Remember, the first case we said the Jew acquired it, but he had not paid yet. So if he had not paid yet, what did the Gemara say, or in the Mishnah in this case, or the Bryce or whatever it was, it said just return that part and just pay for the rest. So now we're raising the question, but if we said Mashiach, active acquisition, counts as buying it, then how is it that he's returning it in the first, and he didn't have to throw it into the Dead Sea? He's returning it and he's not paying for it, so he's getting away with not paying for it. Says why he acquired it when he performed Mashiach. So we're raising that question. So Gemara answers, Amar Abai said, Mishim de michaze ki mikach tos. The reason that the Jew does not acquire the idol in the Bryce's first case is not because of Mashiach, is not because Mashiach does not affect acquisition, but because there is an acquisition made in error. There's such a concept called mekach tos. Mekach tos is when something was bought, you got it, through some sort of acquisition, but it was a mistake. It was a toss. It's not. The guy sold you something. You bought a red car, and they delivered a blue car. You didn't buy a blue car. You bought the red car. It says on the paper, I buy one red Chevy, All right? So that's called a mekach tos. Wrong thing. I'm wondering, there's many situations where this can be. I don't want to go into them in detail. Abai's answer that the Bryce's first case involves an erroneous acquisition. That's a good way for saying it. An erroneous acquisition implies that the Bryce's second case does not involve an erroneous acquisition. Now we're going to question that. And the second case was where he paid ahead of time. He knew what he was buying, scrap metal, but then he discovered in the scrap metal there was an idol part, and he had to throw the idol part into the Yam HaMelech. So we can now explain why we question this. Amar Rava. First we say Abai. Now Rava and Abai are always arguing. All right, Abai and Rava, they're what generation? They're third generation or fourth generation Amoran. Okay, they're the ones we're always hearing about. Just to remind you, this is Rava and Abai. Rava, and they lived in the same household. Abai was adopted there. Rava is with an aleph, and they both learned from Rabba, who's with a hey, and Rabba Bar Nachmani, and Rabba learned from Rabbi Yehuda mostly, and Rav Huna as well. Okay,
Were the ones that lived like 40 and 60?
what's 40 and 60?
The years that they lived.
I don't remember. I don't remember that offhand. Okay, Amar Rava. So what does Rava say with an aleph? Rava says, Reisha mekachtas, Sefer lav mekachtas. He says, in the first case, the one where he's able to give it back before he paid, that's considered an erroneous acquisition. I like that for in English, an erroneous acquisition. All right, but in the second case, where he paid for, First one he paid. No, first one he paid later. First case where he paid. Second case is where he paid first, and then got that twist. Throw it away. Second case is not an acquisition made in error. Why? Why? It is certain then the second case as well. The Jew intended only to buy scrap metal, not an idol. That's a good point. The story you told, the guy wanted to buy scrap metal and they're making it to stuff to sell. He wasn't looking to buy idols. Had he known it was idols, right? He probably wouldn't have bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the road.
Okay, so we'll give you the point. All right, Dave's winning by 3 points. You still have nothing today. Hence, even though he already paid, don't worry, you got plenty of points by me, right? I know. Hence, even though he already paid the purchase money, the only reason I'm saying this is to try and wake up our friend back there who's not saying a word. I don't know if he's listening. Hence, even though he already, is anyone online? Oh, Moshe's online. Who else? Anybody else? 3 people.
Don't lose the sponsors.
I just want to say, so Moshe's online and Z Herschel, who's, I never know who Z Herschel is. That the rabbi's father? I don't know who Z Herschel is.
Probably.
Okay. Okay. Wait, so let's continue. Even though we already made participants, we were able to turn it back to my. Okay, an alternative answer is therefore given. Ella Amar Rava, so Rava says, you didn't like my first answer, I'll give you another answer. Rather, Rava said, Reisha v'Sefer Mekachtas, both cases, we paid it before and after, and then discovered that there's some piece of idol in there. It was idling around in the scrap metal, or erroneous acquisitions. And thus, in both cases, the idol actually still belongs to the idol worshiper because he holds that, and we had said earlier, if it's an erroneous acquisition, then you never intended to buy it. So therefore, you're really, it's not yours. So it should belong to the idol worshiper. And the difference between the 2 cases is that in the first case, that the Bryce's first case, the Jew didn't give the money yet, and that's when he returns it. The idol worshiper does not give him any money in return. That's right. It's even Steven, so he's only paying for what he bought. It does not appear as an idol in the possession of a Jew because there wasn't. He just, hey, this is not part of what I'm buying. Giving it back, so it never appeared like with somebody bought. Save the Abzuzay in the Bryce's second case where the Jew already paid for it. Okay, and thus when he rescinds the deal, and because he says this was a gross acquisition, returns the idol, that worshiper will be giving him his money back. That's the problem. So it appears that the idol is in the possession of a Jew because he's giving him his money back.
He's selling it to the idol worshiper.
What?
It looks like he's selling it to the idol.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. Having just said that, again, the Gemara now challenges Rav Ashi's position that Mashiach does not affect acquisition by idol worshippers. Again, so it seems like this whole page is either about Rav and what he said and challenging him, or about Mashiach, which is the active acquisition. Amalema Kashisha Bered Rav Chista l'Rav Ashi. Makashisha, the son of Rav Chista, said to Rav Ashi, Tashma, come, learn the proof that Mashiach does affect acquisition by idol worshippers. We're going to try this again, for we learned in the Mishnah. Now we're bringing the Mishnah from this side, which comes from a Gemara. With respect, I don't know why I'm saying that since all the Gemaras are over there. I should need to switch sides. Right. With respect to a Jew who sells his wine to an idol worshiper, Pasuk ad Shalom Madad. If he said the price before the idol worshiper measured the wine, dam of mutarim, then the money he gets is permitted. Well, that's good. That sounds like a proof for what Rav holds, get paid before, because that's the way it's allowed, he says. But if you say that the Mashiach does not affect, Mashiach means active acquisition, does not affect the acquisition by an idol worshiper, amai dam of mutarins, he says. So why is the purchase money allowed? The idol worshiper did not acquire the wine when he lifted and measured it. the idol worshiper did not acquire the wine when he lifted and measured it, and when he subsequently touched the wine and read Nesach, it still belonged to the Jew. Okay, well, if he said I'm trying to think about it again. 1 second. All right. A Jew sells wine, kosher wine. He sells it to an idol worshiper. Okay, and he sets the price beforehand. Then that money is his money, no matter what. Now, almost back to your original case, we're saying that money's his, even if the idol worshiper in this case did not pick up the barrel, measure it, or do anything to it yet. Right? So there's no active acquisition made yet, but we're already allowing the money to the Jew. This was the original first case. So Rav Ashi answers, Achabayas kingdom. So what are we dealing with? Aktim le dina. With the idol worshiper gave the Jew a dina for the wine beforehand. Okay, he was paid first. The Gemara objects. This is what I'm saying. It gets very confusing because they keep it going back and forth every time we think we know some. If so, the Mishnah is referring to where the idol worshiper paid for the purchase in advance. Okay. And Maseches. So consider the Mishnah's second case. Madad Achalo Pasuk, where the idol worshiper measured the wine before he set the price. That was the Sefer. He was measuring it. Then we say the money is prohibited. So he sold him the wine. The Jew sold him the wine, but he didn't get paid yet. And then the idol worshiper is measuring it in the safe in the latter part Mishnah. That money is prohibited. Vida kadim le dina. Now, if the Mishnah refers to where the idol worshiper gave the Jew a dina for the wine beforehand, my dam of asurin. So why is its purchase money prohibited? Why? The idol worshiper certainly acquired the wine when he paid for it. It's so confusing. Yeah, it's true. So the idol worshiper did acquire it when he paid for it. The Jew did acquire the money, but then in the Sefer it says, no, we didn't acquire it. I'm totally confused at this point. I get the point. Because what they keep on doing is they keep on coming back with parts of other cases, just they come back and forth and making it, again, a bullion base. So let's hear what the answer is. You really have to have patience in Gemara because it's the only way you can kind of learn a line, try and absorb, learn a line, because as soon as you start jumping ahead, the Gemara is constantly jumping ahead. It just becomes harder and harder. No, not what ifs. Rav Ashi, please. He said to him, he's already jumping ahead 2 lines. I don't mean it personally. I mean, this is what we have to do. And again, we're too far behind. And according to you, this is what Rav Ashi is responding, who says the Mashiach affects acquisition by an idol worshiper. And the reason that the purchase money is prohibited in the first case, in the Resha, is that the idol worshiper acquired the wine in Mashiach when he measured it. Cannot the same question be raised? Measured it afterwards. Amai Resha Dama Mutar V'Seva Dama Isurin. One thing we know for sure, in the ratio of the case, the first part of the Mishnah said the guy can keep the money. And that was the case where he was paid ahead of time. And the Sefer, the latter part of the Mishnah, was where we said he can't keep the money, or he had to throw, in the other case, the idol back into well, that's not called. The Mishnah itself, the pure Mishnah, says in the Sefer, we got paid afterwards, he's not allowed to keep it. And now we're raising the question, again, what if he didn't do Mashiach first? If he did do Mashiach, well, why in the second case as well? He performed Mashiach when he measured the wine. Hence, we should say that there too, the idol worshiper acquired the wine while it was still permitted with the Mashiach they made. And when he measured it, Elamai islach lamema. Rather, what must you say to resolve this? The seller set the price before the buyer performed the Mashiach. The price was set. The buyer is resolved. Even if he didn't get the money now, he gets the money later. The deal was made. It was sealed. He's resolved. The finalist, he's getting the money. The buyer, in other words, the seller's happy. The buyer's resolved to finalize the acquisition with the Mashiach that he performs. So in the end, when the idol worshiper picks it up, Tim, that's the last thing. As far as the Jew's concerned, He made the deal. The guy owes him the money. Lo pasuk lo samcha date. Whereas in the second case, but what happens in the second case, where the seller did not set the price beforehand, right? He wasn't paid before. They never even set the case. This is how we're redefining the Mishnah. Before the Mashiach, the buyer is not resolved to finalize the acquisition with the Mashiach that he performs. Why is the idol worshiper not resolved that when he does Mashiach, he's happy? Because he doesn't know what he has yet, all right? He doesn't want to just pick it up and say, okay, it's mine, I'm leaving the store. He still wants to measure. He wants to know exactly what he paid for, how much he got, et cetera, et cetera. And so they didn't sell the price because he's saying, maybe this wine really isn't so good. No, I don't want this. It's not worth $1 an ounce. It's worth only 10 cents, 50 cents an ounce. So doing the active acquisition is not enough in that point. So anytime you can raise a question in the business deal, it's like, you can sue. You can say, well, maybe therefore it doesn't happen. But once the guy at the beginning in the ratio got his money, the Jew got his money, hey, you know what? You can do whatever you want. I got paid, all right? I made it in the shade. I got paid. I saw it to you. You made the deal. A lot of cases, we didn't make the deal. Yeah, this and that. They both have problems, right? But Dide Nami, according to me as well, that the kesef affects acquisition for idol worshippers, meaning that money. So the last thing we said was the idol worshiper in the active acquisition itself did not acquire it because he still wants to measure it out. He still wants to see quality wine, whatever it is. But according to this person, whoever it is that's speaking, says he holds that kesef, money itself, affects acquisition for idol worshippers. And this we learned like less than 2 weeks ago. I don't remember was with the case, with some case we learned where we said, but they paid. And we said, maybe that was with the dressmakers. I don't remember. We said that once by the non-Jews, the non-Jews in those cases always refers to idol worshippers in that time. We're not talking about people who are not Jewish now. We're talking about idol worshippers. That they even, according to this opinion, hold that they acquire things by money. And yeah, remember the case? The idol worshiper came and he wanted to rent the Jew's donkey. That was the case. And he said, here's money, I'm renting your donkey. Right? And then he goes off with the donkey. And then the Jew sees, he's carrying a bottle of Nessich wine on it. So then we raised the whole question, by the way, that's allowed. So we said, no, they hold that once they paid, that was the deal was made. Okay. So now, Afagav the Kadim Le Dina, even though the Mishnah refers to where the idol worshiper gave the Jew a dinar for the wine beforehand, Pasuk Samcha Date, is only once the seller set the price that the buyer is resolved to finalize the acquisition of the money he gave. That's interesting. But as long as the seller did not set the price, the buyer is not resolved to finalize the acquisition with the money he gave, and thus the king and kesef is ineffective. So now we're throwing out the fact that he gave him some money, because we're saying that money, that might have been a down payment, or it might have been an overpayment, because the buyer saying, wait, you rooked me, you sold me a lousy car, this can't be fixed, this is a lemon, there's a lemon law, I return within 3 days, you got to give me my money back, all right? You misrepresented the wine. Okay. Another challenge to Rav Ashi's position. See, no matter what we learn, we're always going to challenge and raise another question. The Mashiach, that acquisition does not affect acquisition by idol worshippers. All right, the last one had to do where we use money. All right, Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi. Ravina said to Rav Ashi, Tashma, come. Oh, it's 7:30. We're almost. How far are we from the end there in the Gemara? We'll go a little bit further. All right, what?
2 lines.
All right. Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi. Ravina said to Rav Ashi, Tashma, come learn the proof from Mashiach that Mashiach affects acquisition by idol worshippers. The Amarav Chia Ba'aba. Amarav Yechon. So he said, it's a long name, Ben Noach Nerag Pachas Mishava Prusa. A Noahite is executed for stealing from a Jew an article that's even less than the value of a pruta. Whoa, that's really a strict law. So a Ben Noach, someone who holds the 7 laws, the 7 Noahide laws, if he steals from a Jew less than the value of that which a Jew can marry a woman, less than Sheva Pruta, he's executed for that. Whoa! That's really heavy. Isn't that what it is? He's narrowed. Well, no, is executed for stealing from a Jew an article that's worth less Sheva Pruta. V'lo nitan li'shavan, and the article is not subject to being returned. The prohibition against stealing is one of the 7 commandments that God gave Noah and his descendants. Each of these commandments carries the death penalty. Oh, that's why. That's the law. But if you say that Mashiach doesn't affect acquisition by an idol worshiper, it emerges that the idol worshiper did not acquire the stolen object when he took physical possession of the item. So when he stole, when this Noahide, when this Ben Noach, when this non-Jew who accepted the 7 Noahide laws stole the object and therefore took possession of it, but it's worth less than a pruta. On one hand, the law says he's supposed to be killed, but if we say that Mashiach, active acquisition, does not mean he acquired it. He's holding there, red-handed. He's holding this thing. It's a half pruta. He says, well, why are you going to kill me? I don't own this. It's a good question. Am I narag? Why is he executed? So Rav Ashi says, it jumped at me. Let me read the last sentence here. If you say Mashiach does not affect, it emerges that the idol worshiper did not acquire the stolen object when he took physical, when he took physical what? Physical, I'm finishing now, and we took physical.
We still have half an hour.
No, we don't learn a half, we only learn an hour and a half on Sundays.
It's
And it emerges 7:30, right? We started at 6 a.m. Right, that's time for us to prepare for davening. We now always stop at 7:30 a.m. on Sundays. All right? And if you said Mashiach does not affect acquisition by an idol worshiper, it emerges the idol worshiper did not acquire the stolen object when he took physical. This is not following what? So, I'm turning 2 pages. That's what. Possession of the item. I might not. Why is he killed? Rabbi answers, because he anguished the Jew. It's like Tzad Balei Chaim. Okay, we end there. No, that's true. We stop at 7:30.
I believe you now, but I just have a general question.
Right, let me shut this off. All right.
You kept saying
Let me shut this off.
maybe
And then you can
Moshe
ask
can
me a question.
answer. Maybe Moshe can.
Then you
answer
can call
something.
Moshe, because we
don't
don't do this until